Moscow 41 by Vento Nuovo. Vento Nuovo is an Italian publisher. I played a game by them last year, a game about Waterloo. It was a pretty large box. This one clearly is much more approachable, affordable, portable even. And it's also pretty easy to get into. The rules are well written and very linear. This could be easily an introductory war game. Not like the most introductory ever, like if you're looking for a super simple game to introduce a young gamer to wargaming, but for an adult picking up a game with the intention of learning the joys of wargaming, this could be a good choice in terms of complexity. Moscow 41, The Road to Moscow, July-December 1941. So we are in the opening phases of the Barbarossa campaign, a two-player game, Soviet Union versus Germany, and it is a block game. It is a block game, and if you want some of my videos in the past, you know that I'm already partial to that idea. I really like block games. I like all of the information that blocks allow you to keep track of in a simple and elegant way. I like the way blocks look on the board. So definitely I started with some excitement and pretty high hopes, given also how much I enjoyed the previous game by Vento Nuovo that I played. Let me tell you how Moscow 41 plays, and then I'll share some ideas and opinions about the game with you. Here you have a general view of the map for the game. It is printed on quite thick cardstock. It is folded when you open the box, but it unfolds pretty easily and it lays flat quite well. I didn't need to use a piece of plexiglass to put it under to play the game. The map, as you can see, is divided in areas of different shape. Borders between areas are defined by those white lines that you see, or by rivers. Terrain in each area is identified by a dot of different color, giving you the difference between rough terrain and clear terrain, such as in this case. You have cities represented by those white dots there. Icons are printed on the board to help you with setup. And then we have special locations indicated with a star. Those are victory point areas. And there, yes, you're seeing this right. There is an icon printed there to indicate Stalin. There aren't many East Front games that have a game piece representing Hitler and a game piece representing Stalin, but this is one of those games. This is a block war game. That means that pieces in the game are represented by a wooden block with a sticker on one of the sides. The pieces will be standing during regular gameplay and between turns, and they will be facing the owner only, so that the opponent sees where the blocks of the enemy are, but doesn't see exactly what they are. Blocks are revealed only when blocks of the two different players share the same area, in which case the blocks will be revealed during combat, keeping, however, the orientation. The orientation of the block is very important because the number of dots that is on top when the block is standing represents the current strength of the block. This block, for example, has 4 points of strength. If the block takes a hit, it is rotated to indicate it only has 3 left or 2, and when the block receives reinforcements, the block is rotated the other way around. Very nice, economic way of keeping track of a lot of information on a single game piece. Also, the color of the dots is important because depending on the color, a block is more or less likely to hit in combat. A black dot indicates very low chances of hitting in combat, only when you roll a 6 on a 6-sided die. A white dot indicates a chance of hitting on a 5 or a 6, and a red dot on 4, 5, or 6 on a red-sided die, on a 6-sided die. As you can see, the color, therefore, the effectiveness in combat of a unit may change depending on the level of strength. Really nice idea here. Well, I guess I can already anticipate the core of combat, as you can imagine, is when you're attacking, you roll a number of dice equal to the current number of pips of dots representing the strength of your unit. In this case, for example, if this unit were to attack, it would roll 4 dice, and each die hits on a number within the range of success for the color that you're using. 5 or 6, 4, 5, 6, only 6. So the blocks, as we said, will be standing facing the owner during regular combat. The ones that I showed you are combat blocks and also are generic blocks because, well, at least these ones are, because as you can see, the main symbol, the NATO symbol, is white. You also have blocks with a color NATO symbol belonging to specific headquarters, and you have combat pieces, or you have game pieces representing the headquarters. So this one would command the blocks of this color here. Also, you see the background. Some have a darker background, and that indicates fast units. Some have a lighter background, and that indicates slow units. And the headquarters also have a strength or an effectiveness rating based on the number that is on top when the block is standing. And the headquarters spend these points to order units, to command units. Blocks can order units of their own color, can also within command range, can also order white NATO symbol units within range order, and they can order any unit in the area in which they are. And the command range depends on the effectiveness. The more points you have here on top, the larger, the wider is your range of command. Now, how does a turn work? Very easy. A turn, starting from the second turn, starts with the logistics phase, when the players can choose to activate their big leader or to rejuvenate their big leader. Yes, you do have a game piece for Stalin, and you do have a game piece for Hitler, and they spend resources to send resources out and to give benefits to their own combatants. Precisely because of this, they spend those resources, and during the logistics phase, you can choose to use your logistics phase to, as we said, reintegrate full strength to your leader, or you can activate the leader that will be reduced at the end of the action to regenerate headquarters, to replace combat block strength, to deploy reinforcements, this kind of thing. So use it or regenerate it. Next, we start with the main impulses. Players will alternate taking impulses, and players can choose to play a strategic impulse or a tactical impulse. You can choose a strategic impulse only if you have the initiative marker, the initiative disc, which is this one, and if you take a strategic impulse, then the disc goes to the other player. So if you take a strategic impulse, then the disc goes to the other player. During a strategic impulse, you can move and build. You can move your blocks or build defensive lines, which are built by reducing your blocks, and they're very useful. Guess what? To defend in combat. You can move and or build defensive lines in freedom, basically disregarding headquarters, disregarding normal command rules, which is super important because sometimes you're stuck, your headquarters are not where they should be. Then strategic impulse allows you to realign your troops and to prepare further actions. Or you can choose to use your strategic impulse, again fueled by your initiative disc, by using the initiative disc, to call for reinforcements, in which case you draw blocks from your pool. It's really neat. I always like games where you're drawing your reinforcements. Yes, it brings a little bit of chaos, but also a little bit of unpredictability because you do not know exactly what you're going to get, and you have to deal with whatever reinforcement the central command is sending. So this is for the strategic impulse, at the end of which you need to give the initiative disc, and therefore the chance for a strategic impulse, to your opponent. Main turns, I should say main impulses, are tactical impulses during which you activate one or several of your headquarters, such as, say, this one. You activate the headquarter, then you can move the headquarter itself up to its movement allowance, and once the headquarter stops, it can activate blocks in its own area, as we said, or in command range. blocks that are activated by an HQ, so the HQ is revealed to perform its function. Blocks that are activated can move up to the full movement allowance, spending different amounts of points depending on the terrain that they are entering. And after that movement has been resolved, you will resolve combat in all areas that have blocks belonging to both players. Then you you reduce the headquarters that you use by 1, and you put them face up. Now, another thing that actually headquarters can do is to order artillery support. Each headquarter has an artillery support token, such as this one, that can be placed in an adjacent area to support a fight. There may also be the presence of air support, in which case also you produce, if you have it, you produce support tokens that will help you in battle. But talking about the general idea of combat, first the players will need to reveal the blocks that they have in a fight. Then there may be artillery fire that needs to be resolved in case there was an headquarter that called for artillery support. Then that may reduce the defender. Then you have possibly the defender anti-air fire. In case the attacker did commit air support, then the surviving aircraft get to attack. But I want to get to the main. I want to give you a good sense of the main thing, which is pretty much linear. If you play Columbia war games, then you send this sort of mechanic, which is very common in block games. The defender fires first, unless, and this is a really interesting twist, unless the attacker has a tank advantage. That is, the attacker is attacking in clear terrain, the attacker has a tank and the opponent doesn't, then the attacker gets to attack first. Otherwise, the defender fires first. Once you determine who fires first, the player that fires first rolls dice, inflicts hits on the opponent, hits go on the strongest block that is reduced, then hits are assigned 1 by 1. So as you assign hits, another block may become the stronger one, and that block gets hits. Remnants, well, survivors of the attack, after the defender or the attacker went first, get to roll with whatever is left. And then the combat is over. This is pretty interesting. There's only one round of combat, so if one of the two sides is not completely eliminated and both sides are still there, well, the thing remains unresolved. It will need to be resolved in a later turn. A couple of other special circumstances may occur after combat. For example, there may be blitz-capable headquarters, commanders, such as this one. Then, in case a green area was cleared during a battle, this commander can call for a blitz, so the fast blocks in tactical range may move to an uncontested green area. You may have exploitation movement, which again will be fueled by an initiative of a disc if you have it. But in general, that is the general sense of how the game works. The game continues until the end of the scenario that you have decided to play, unless one of the players meets instant death victory conditions. In general, victory is based on control of locations that give victory points to the players that control them. Now, what you saw in the video probably shares a lot in common with other games that you may know, especially if you play block games by Columbia Games. You see many resemblances here, and there's nothing wrong with that, really. When I go to a restaurant and I'm looking for good food, I do not necessarily need to eat something that was based on a completely innovative recipe. I'm happy eat the recipe that I know has been performed well, implemented well, has resulted in a nice dish. The same here if I see ideas from other block games. So for example, the idea of moving blocks representing commanders and then spending them and basically pretty much using those resources to activate blocks belonging to their own group and other blocks with some flexibility there. The idea then of spending resources from the top of the chain of command to refuel those headquarters. We have seen that in Columbia block games. Again, no problem in saying it here. The same, for like the area, the design of the areas, the block themselves. Columbia Games pretty much. No, I wouldn't say that doesn't. It's far from doesn't have a copyright, doesn't have a monopoly, but we tend to identify those games with Columbia, and I'm glad that Vento Nuovo has picked up those ideas and has made them very much their own, because this implementation of those well-known ideas in wargaming is very satisfying, very pleasant, very nicely done. Production-wise, I think that the map is a beauty. I really like it. I really think that it's perfectly functional. It has a nice, really has a nice look to it. When you have the blocks, sometimes the blocks will cover the small icon that represents the type of terrain, but you can kind of tell, in advance, more or less, what the terrain is. The alternative would be to have the whole area of a specific color, and there's a price to pay for that too, which is it may result in a map that you may not want to look at for the time that it takes to play the game. So I didn't have any particular problem with the map functionally. I enjoyed the way it looked, I enjoyed the blocks, I enjoyed the stickers, meaning the design, very simple, very linear, very elegant. Yes, the pictures of Stalin and Hitler will be disturbing to some, but I didn't find that to be that big of a problem for me. Game-wise, I think the game has a really nice balance between ease of play and detail / complexity. That is, it's one of those economic designs that do not have too many rules for you to learn, but that allow to create gameplay that has some depth and that has its own rewards and challenges and tough decisions. The gameplay is pretty asymmetrical, as you may expect from this theme. However, I had to say something. When you play war games about Barbarossa, especially the early phases, very often, if the game starts from the very beginning of the campaign, you start with a couple of rounds in which you're simply rolling dice for the Germans that are disintegrating small Russian units all across the line. So the first turn or two, those games that start from the very beginning, tend to be a little tedious, tend to feel like extended setup, because the Russian player doesn't have much to do but just to look in horror as his or her units get destroyed. Here the game starts a little earlier, so we start when the situation is a little more interesting. The Russians have kind of like figured out that the war is going on, that they should react, and they're starting assembling their forces. So I like the fact that you start in the middle of the action, when the action gets interesting, and the Germans start on one side and start pushing, and like in games, in any case about the early phases of Barbarossa, the Russians have to try to absorb the punches, find a good balance between holding their ground and retreating when holding one's ground becomes unfeasible or dangerous, or puts you at risk of getting enveloped, encircled by the opponent. So definitely you have non-symmetrical strategies here that need to be implemented, and as it should be, the momentum of the Germans, however, tends to decrease as the game progresses. So as it very well should be, the German player has to make haste and try to gain as much ground as possible in the early phases of the game. And every time that you have the two different approaches to strategy, approaches to gameplay that have been ingrained in the design, you have an increased replay value, because by switching sides, then you find yourself almost playing a different game, almost playing, oh, not almost, but truly facing different set of challenges and possibilities that you have to deal with, opportunities that you have to maximize. The player has, again, to bite the bullet and resist and retreat as slowly as possible, trying also to build up some opportunities for counterattacks, trying to threaten the German supply lines, almost more like a psychological effect, just to slow down the Germans that cannot ignore the possibility of having their supply lines cut. So very interesting sets of challenges for both sides, and again, this achieved without a big overhead of rules, without a burden of complex procedures. Everything feels pretty intuitive. Everything, once you get down the basic ideas, that you have to trickle down the supplies from the top and then spread it around your units, activate them, etc., etc. I think feels pretty intuitive, and all the various elements of the game go well together. From the basic things that you have, moving and attacking, to figuring out ways of replenishing your units, choosing which parts of your front will receive resources so you can activate them later. Everything is interesting, everything works well, and everything again is very approachable. You have, it's an elegant design in the sense that what it achieves in terms of complexity and depth is more than it will look like at first sight from the core of rules that you have to learn, which is fairly lean, very approachable. So Moscow 41, I'm very pleased with this game, production-wise, mechanically, gameplay-wise. I think it's a very good game. I enjoy playing it, and I recommend it to pretty much any wargamer that is interested in the topic, and anyone who wants to get started with wargaming. I think this could be a good starting point.